Değerli konuklarımız, kıymetli katılımcılar, şimdi bugünün paralel oturumlarla birlikte aslında sayıyı özellikle söylemek istiyorum. 22. oturumuna geçiyoruz. Yani bir hayli yoğun, bir hayli verimli, farklı farklı alanlarda hem network hem de eğitim çalışmalarıyla devam eden önemli bir süreç var önümüzde. Ve bu oturumda bence bu gerçekleşen zirvenin önemli oturumlarından bir tanesi olacak. Türkiye Katılım Bankaları Birliği sponsorluğunda gerçekleştiriliyor. Dijital Çağda İslami Finans Sektörünün Dönüşümü Fırsatlar ve Riskler başlıklı bir oturum bu. Oturuma geçmeden önce kısa bir video var. Gelin önce onu hep beraber izleyelim, sonra devam edeceğiz.
Kazanmayı, bununla birlikte inanç ve değerlerimizi yok saymadan kazanmayı esas alır. Katılım bankacılığı, yatırımlarınızın doğru yerlere kanalize edilerek hem sizlerin hem de bankanızın adilce kazandığı bir sistemdir. Nasıl mı? Bir işe yatırım yaptığınızı ya da emeğinizi koyduğunuzu düşünün. O işten alnınızın teriyle elde ettiğiniz kar ne kadar hakkınızsa, birikiminizi katılım bankacılığında değerlendirerek elde ettiğiniz kar payı da o kadar hakkınızdır. Bizce kazanç kadar nasıl kazanıldığı da önemlidir. Bu yüzden katılım bankacılığında şeffaflık esastır. Birikiminizin nerede, ne şekilde değerlendirildiğini bilirsiniz. Böylece bankanızın yaptığı yatırıma, dolayısıyla bu yatırımdan elde edilen kâra ve zarara katılım bankasıyla birlikte ortak olursunuz. Paranız hem kanuni düzenlemelere hem de faizsiz bankacılık ilkelerine uygun yönetilmiş ve değerlendirilmiş olur. Bu sayede birikimleriniz inançlarınıza ters düşecek alanlara değil, toplum sağlığına hizmet eder. Kısaca sizlere daima güler yüzlü ve kaliteli hizmet veren katılım bankacılığı, aynı değerlerle yoğrulmuş, aynı yoldan geçmiş, aynı toprağa basan, aynı havayı soluyan bizlerin bankacılığıdır. Gücümüzü birleştirip birlikte üretmek, birlikte kazanmaktır. Çünkü siz kazandıkça, birlikte kazandıkça, omuz omuza bir oldukça biliyoruz ki Türkiye kazanır, Türkiye güçlenir. Türkiye katılımla güçleniyor.
Değerli konuklarımız, hemen hatırlatmamı yapayım. Eğer sorularınız var ise, daha doğrusu panel sırasında sorularınız olur ise, bu sorularınızı Slido'nun uygulaması ve web sitesi üzerinden @asalonu tspk etiketiyle iletebilirsiniz. Moderatörümüze ulaşıyor bu sorular elektronik ortamda. Eğer toplantı sonunda sorular için kafi miktarda süre kalır ise sayın moderatörümüz hem Slido uygulaması üzerinden hem de varsa salondan soruları panelistlere, katılımcılara iletecek. Bir kere daha vurgulayalım eğer süre kalır ise. Çünkü 1 saatlik bir zaman dilimi var her bir panelimizde. Bu da bir hayli yoğun bir konu. Şimdi efendim hangi başlıklar var onları da kısacık hatırlatmak isterim. İslami finans kurumları için yasal düzenlemelerin geliştirilmesi, etik finans kavramı ile İslami finans kavramı arasında kurulabilecek bağlar, yeni teknolojilerin finansal kapsama ve KOBİ finansmanındaki rolü gibi birçok önemli başlık konuşulacak efendim. Bu toplantının moderatörlüğünü BDDK Katılım Bankacılığı Daire Başkanı Sayın Ömer Çekin beyefendi gerçekleştirecekler. Sayın Çekin, buyurunuz efendim. Çok teşekkür ediyorum. Ve değerli konuşmacılarımızı da hızla takdim etmek isterim. Akreditus Genel Müdürü ve Kurucusu Sayın Khalid Howladar. Mr. Howladar, would you please? Sayın Başkan, sizi böyle alabilirim. İslam Kalkınma Bankası Kıdemli Teknik Uzman ve Başkan Yardımcısı Danışmanı Sayın Fatih Kazan. Sayın Kazan, buyurun lütfen. Islamic Finance Advisory and Assurance Services CEO'su ve Islamic Finance Initiation Network kurucusu Sayın Mohammad Farrukh Raza. Mr. Raza, would you please? Thank you very much. Sayın Başkan, söz ve sahne sizdedir. Süremiz 1 saattir. Başarılı bir oturum olmasını diliyorum efendim.
Teşekkür ederiz. Sağ olun. Yes. Honorable speakers, honorable guests, my colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, all of you welcome here, all of you welcome to our sessions. First of all, I want to state my feelings. I'm so delighted and also so excited to see all of you here and talk about Islamic finance in this highly respectable Congress. Today we're going to talk about not just Islamic finance and also its interaction with the recent technological improvements in recent years, and its social impact within the context of financial inclusion. I want to state some things about our session, and then I will give the speech to my speakers. When we talk about fintech, as Turkish people, we are very proud of our current status. Make you understand, I want to share with you just one number. According to the report prepared by Turkish Bank Association, by the end of 2018, there were 44 million active fintech users in Turkey. That is fairly high. And we think that we are in front row when we compare with the other countries and even developed countries. And we can understand that more than half our adult population use actively financial technologies. But on the other hand, unfortunately, we are not content with the sectoral share of our Islamic finance in Turkey. Unfortunately, I say. Of course, there are a lot of reasons, and we try to overcome that problems. And today, that is the critical questions. We will try to find out that fintech is one of the reasons for that or not, or just opposite. Maybe that is encouraging factor for that. And before and also I want to say that about fintech especially, of course we know that the fintech is not just for only mobile banking. There are also some other aspects like blockchain and payment systems. And with the awareness of this, we try to develop other aspects of fintech in Turkey through establishing different platforms in governmental bodies and also in private sector institutions, and through establishing fintech laboratories in our universities and also in our highly appreciated National Research and Technology Council, TÜBİTAK I mean. And one more that, this is very important. As you know, Istanbul Financial Center project, International Financial Center project is nowadays in progress, you know. And this project is being run by Finance Office of Presidency. This is our highly national strategy. And Finance Office has determined two focusing areas for that. What are they? Maybe you know, maybe you can imagine that. They are fintech and Islamic finance. We try to realize our potential for those areas, for those two areas. We try to be a hub for fintech and Islamic financial services. But we don't want to be a standard, a common financial centers. And after this short introduction, without wasting time, I want to turn to my speakers, and maybe if you want, you can introduce yourself a little bit, maybe, because it's very important for the audiences.
Thank you for that introduction, and my thanks to the CMA for the opportunity to speak. Merhaba and Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good afternoon. I have a bit of an interesting career. I was originally a programmer. I was originally a technology guy back in Credit Suisse. In those days, though, the technology guy was at the back. Now the technology guy is at the front.
Yes.
So I started at Credit Suisse in risk management. I was 15 years at Moody's.
Oh.
At Moody's, I was the head of Middle East banks.
Wow.
And the global head of Islamic. And it's in that context, when I was looking at Turkey, Malaysia, the Gulf, etc., you really see the differences between the countries. And then 3 years ago, I set up my own firm, and as well as sort of consulting, we have invested in some startups.
Yes.
And one of those startups, Blossom Finance, which I will talk about later,
yes,
has done the world's first sukuk, mudarba, on the blockchain for social impact.
This
So
is the first one in the world.
You know,
Yes.
many different things, and I'll be really excited to share that with the audience today.
Okay, please. Yes, Fatih.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organization committee and TKBB, Turkish Participation Bank Association, to invite me. I'm working in the Islamic Development Bank in the finance complex. Before I was working in World Bank for 3 years on Islamic finance area. And actually, I'm still an employee of BRSA, Banking Regulation and Supervision
Yes.
Agency. And Ömer is my colleague. So thank you very much. I hope it's going to be a great session.
Yes, it's welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, marhaba. My name is Farrukh Raza. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of IFAS, Islamic Finance Advisory and Assurance Services. It's always a pleasure for me to be in Turkey, be in Istanbul, and I'm really delighted, to have participated. I've been invited to, share my humble experience with you. Being an Islamic banker by background, I was part of the management team that launched the first Islamic bank ever in the Western world, and that was Islamic Bank of Britain back in the early 2000s in the UK. Since then, my journey continued in the industry, and over the last 13 years since we founded IFAS, I have been privileged to have worked in 47 different countries, all the way from North America to the Far East, where we have completed projects related to Islamic finance. The majority of them is actually advising the governments in building the infrastructure for Islamic finance to implement and to roll it out in the new markets. I have been actually involved in a number of very strategic projects, including doing, for example, the National Master Plan for Islamic finance for the government of Indonesia a few years ago, and many more. Recently, I think over the last 3-4 years, we have turned towards fintech, and I also have had a lot of interaction with the fintech initiatives that are around the world, and especially who are trying to penetrate into the Islamic finance market. And also, I have been a co-founder of an Islamic fintech of its own, and I will tell you later about that. So I'm here, inshallah, to share my experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to start with Mr. Farrukh Raza. That's the first question. About fintech. How our fintech development changed the landscape of the Islamic finance, especially? What do you think about it? And at the same time, can you answer that question? What are the unique risks and opportunities and challenges, specifically for Islamic finance, fintech, I mean?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think it's a very good start for the session.
Yes.
Fintech or financial technology is redefining financial sector altogether, whether conventional or Islamic. Islamic is not immune to that.
Yeah.
So there is actually a lot of things happening in the fintech space that are having an impact on Islamic banking or participation banking as well.
Yes.
For me, being a veteran of this industry and having had a tremendously wide and deep exposure to this industry, my view is that currently Islamic finance or participation finance is actually at a crossroads of opportunities and threats same time. Traditionally, what has happened, and I think Turkey is an example, that Katilim banking has existed here for many, I think a couple of decades now at least, right?
Yeah.
But the market share is still limited due to a number of challenges that they are facing, and one of the challenges is actually their outreach, and having a distribution network that is allowing them actually to penetrate into the segments of the market where they need to be. And that has been a challenge for Islamic financial industry as a whole. Now with the advent of fintech, I think it's becoming very much possible. So the opportunity for participation banking now is that they can do things that they were probably not able to do before. Meaning that their cost of operation can reduce significantly,
Yes.
their outreach can increase immensely, meaning that they will be able actually to service those very lucrative segments of market that were out of their reach. And obviously, they were doing. I give you an example of SME financing.
Yes,
in a
we are very
country
curious
like
about it.
Turkey, where the economy is very strongly depending on SMEs, and SME is one of the key strengths of Turkey. I know that the Katilim banks are doing a lot with the SMEs, but still there is a huge potential out there, and that will be possible only when they will be able actually to penetrate into that market and come up with something, a solution that is adopted to them. That was difficult, but now with the advent of fintech, I think it has become, very much possible now. The other thing I think is financial literacy, the level of awareness about Islamic finance as a whole, the issue of, the prohibition of faiz or interest, and, the sensitivity, the education of, the public, I think is very important, and it's a very costly exercise. But now with fintech, I think it's very much possible. So, again, Qatalim banks can benefit largely from this new, the new technologies that are coming into market to, to increase the awareness, to educate, the customer, and then, offer something, offer products and a distribution that is, much better, that could be potentially much better than conventional, and, it can help them. This is the opportunity. The threat is, in my view, that if this opportunity is lost, if the Qatalim banks, and this is not only in Turkey, overall, the overall Islamic financial industry, if it does not, grab this opportunity and they do not act accordingly, then there is an existential threat even, for Islamic financial industry, I would say, because the fintechs that are coming, they are of very disruptive nature, and if the banks do not actually, line up quickly, with the new technologies, then they will be probably left out, and it will become much harder for them, to capture that market once it's gone to the fintechs.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I want to continue with Mr. Khalid Howladar, and I want to ask you how fintech is enabling Islamic finance 3.0.
Actually, I'd like to answer that question as well, if I could, if it's okay.
If it's okay.
Yeah, just because, look, I have some views, sometimes controversial, on the states of Islamic finance. Of the $2.2 trillion of Islamic finance assets, I would say 90%, 95% pretty much replicates conventional finance in terms of its value to the community, in terms of its value to people. And so why is that? Because we exist in a conventional debt world. It's hard to operate a different business model.
Yes.
The Islamic business model is more about investing. Crowdfunding is Islamic. Silicon Valley private equity is Islamic.
Definitely.
Lending is not. You can see in Europe, as Mr. Levant was saying in the panel before, $15 trillion of debt, negative yields. Negative. You're guaranteed 100% to lose money if you invest, yet $15 trillion invested in that.
Wow.
Europe is not growing because this idea that you create economic growth by getting people to buy things they don't need with money they don't have doesn't work in the long term. You can't just keep pumping money into the system and generate growth. This is conventional banking. Islamic banking at the moment, honestly, doesn't yet do something much different. Loans, buy your iPhone, buy your handbag, buy your TV or something. With fintech, it brings down the cost of investing. So the Islamic finance model is really about investing culture. If you look at who in this world has got rich, it's people who own assets. You own businesses, you own land, you own property. Those assets have gone up in value far beyond anything that you would earn on your cash deposits. So the investment culture is a way to both create wealth and share wealth. Now, investing is very hard and very expensive to do.
Yes.
With technology, you can now bring down that cost so that everybody can invest. Everyone can be an investor. Everyone can be an asset owner. Everyone can share in the returns of equity, not just the business owners, not just those who are owning land and property and so on. And so this trend towards crowdfunding, no one is calling it Islamic, but it's the most Islamic thing that you can see. And so this, for me, Islamic finance version 2 or version 3 is about bringing this model into the participation banking sector so that it genuinely offers something different to just pumping debt into the market and convincing people to buy more houses for a higher price, inflation. And I mean, Turkey has more than enough experience with inflation than I will ever have in 10 lifetimes. So for me, this really is an opportunity for Islamic finance to do something different and actually go back to the principles of non-interest-based financing. And just to be clear, it should succeed not because it's Islamic, it should succeed because it creates wealth for people, it shares the wealth. Judaism, Christianity, I found out even the Greeks had a prohibition on riba. So, yeah, this is something, yeah, the Greeks, so way back. And so when you have that prohibition on interest, it forces you to invest because the only way to earn money is to invest. And technology, I think, can take us in that direction.
Okay. Okay. And if you want, can you tell us, can you explain a little bit from your, the last sukuk issues, and if you, and we can present your...
Sure.
Yes.
So I have a presentation. I will stand in the corner. So look, I can complain as much as I want about the 2 trillion worth of Islamic assets that I actually don't think are making a huge amount of difference. Or, with some pioneering partners, try to actually show a different way of doing things. And inshallah, if there's a movement towards that direction, if people want this, it will grow, not because the government wants to increase the share of participation banking from 5 to 10%. Just because the government wants it, it doesn't mean it will happen. If you get the people, if you get investors to come into this, then maybe there's a chance. So one of the companies that, actually, let me go back, sorry. One of the companies that I work with wanted to bring Islamic finance more to help the low-income people, the social impact, actually make a difference to those who are unbanked or out of the banking system. But before I go into that, here's a chart to show that fintech actually succeeds more. Is there a pointer here? No, okay. Fintech succeeds more when it partners with banks, not disrupting banks. So if you see the yellow circles, those are the fintechs that work with banks. And those are the ones that tend to be profitable and growing. Of course, if you have you know, an eBay or a Google or something, you can disrupt existing players, but that's much harder to do. So fintechs that partner with banks tend to do better. Banks are not very good, frankly, at innovation. They're slow, they're bureaucratic, and their own internal technology teams are already part of the problem. A blockchain engineer might cost you like $4,000 a day. How many of those are present within the banks? So you already have this competing tension even inside a bank. So why don't we see sukuk at the lower end? The minimum subscription size for a sukuk at the moment is around $100,000 to $200,000. No one can buy a sukuk in the retail segment. If you want to issue a sukuk, you have to pay legal fees, fatwa fees, bank fees. You're already spending $1 million before you even have a chance. So this is why the private sector, smaller tickets cannot do sukuk, they're too expensive. With the blockchain, now that blockchain is a whole different conversation, but you reduce the cost of all of these guys disappear, which is why lawyers might not be happy, or actually you still need lawyers, but custodians, you reduce the number of parties who are involved in a transaction, and by using a smart contract, you lower the cost. So the first sukuk that we did was only $50,000. It's the world's smallest sukuk. So what is Blossom? You have on the left side, capital providers. In the middle, you have a Blossom blockchain-based platform, regulated. It's a US company by the SEC and Bank Indonesia. Our partners on the other side are microfinance institutions. Now, we could easily have Turkish participation banks there, but at the moment, microfinance in Indonesia, it's a very well-developed industry. They serve micro-entrepreneurs, micro-SMEs. So my colleague Farrukh was talking about SMEs. Of course, SMEs are the lifeblood of the economy. If you want to create wealth at the bottom end, invest in people, invest in businesses. Having loans or debts, you know, this is a different model. And absolutely, if you can support micro-entrepreneurs and micro-businesses, you will generate wealth at the bottom end of society. So easily, on the left side, you can have a participation bank. Any financial assets can be tokenized. Now, tokenized, simplistically, is a digital version of an asset. That means without using a pen, paper, you can fully transact without having to slow down with the real world infrastructure. We use the Ethereum blockchain. There's a standard called the ERC20 standard. There's around $13 to $14 billion of assets that are using this standard. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Another way to look at blockchain, when you use an app on the internet, you don't worry how the internet works. You don't care. All you do, you look at your app. Same with the blockchain. You don't have to be a blockchain expert to understand how the structure works. You just put your applications on the top of the blockchain. It's an infrastructure. Ethereum is blockchain version 2. Probably we will have to get to version 7, 8, 9 before we have a worldwide blockchain standard. But nonetheless, I genuinely believe within 5 to 10 years, this will be as important for financial services as the internet is today. Another way to look at this blockchain Ethereum standard, if you think about shipping, if you go to any dock, they all use the standard size containers. Before you had those containers, shipping things around the world was very complicated, very esoteric. Now, worldwide, 60% of all trade happens using those yellow boxes, those containers. The ERC standard is simply a container, and any financial asset goes in. And then, even though this platform is starting in Indonesia, if you have a platform in Istanbul, in Saudi, in the US, they can all actually trade the same financial assets. So some of the partners, we're talking to banks in Turkey, Indonesia, Saudi, and the UAE. If all of these Islamic banks are using the same standard, and ERC20 is not our standard, it's a global standard, they can all start trading their assets with each other, the sukuk with each other. So instead of having a market of 5 million people, you might have a market of 50 million people trading Islamic sukuk. That's just an example of the platform. These are some of the benefits. So for banks, strengthen capital, profitability, lots of different benefits I won't go through. But that was really it, just to introduce them. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Howladar, for this highly important information for that. I want to change our view a little bit into other field, and I want to ask Mr. Fatih Kazan. What do you think, Mr. Fatih? How can Islamic finance help countries like Turkey especially to foster financial inclusion and social impact, and particularly with regard to access to finance? What do you think about it?
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. As you know, financial inclusion and social inclusion is related to the ending poverty, boosting shared prosperity, and sustainable development goals. And G20 leaders have made financial inclusion as one of the key pillars of their strategic growth decisions. And national and international standard setters organization, they recognize the importance of financial inclusion as well for their economic and social progresses. So in terms of access to finance, there is one study by World Bank, Global Findex report, which says 96% of adults in the world are banked, which means they have an account in a financial institution. Otherwise, it means that the report says 1.7 billion adults in the world are unbanked, which means they have no banking account or any account in a financial institution. So what is the reason for that? Of course, there are several reasons, but the easiest answer is, they have no money to put their money into financial system. Maybe. Or another answer could be It is very expensive to have a financial account in the institutions, or it is too far away, or I mean, people have no need to have, you know, a financial institution to work with,
Yes.
or maybe someone in the family have the accounts, or other members they don't have it. But interestingly, another reason is religion. In average, 6% in the world, they don't have any banking account, any financial account, because of religious reason.
Oh, 6%.
And the more interesting thing is, for some countries, I mean, you may guess, I mean, which countries are like this. It is more than 20%. I mean, surveyed people, 20% surveyed people saying that they don't prefer using any financial institution because of religion system. And Turkey is one of those countries. Turkey, Jordan, Pakistan, and
I want to ask
Tunisia.
do you believe that, or what do you mean? They don't believe also in Islamic financial institutions, or without conventional ones?
I mean, they don't have any financial account.
Any financial,
not
yes.
in conventional
And also
system or
Islamic.
in participation banks.
Yeah.
Because of, you
Very
know,
interesting.
I mean, the main reason is because they don't trust the system
Oh,
because of their religious system.
very high, yes.
So what's going to be the solution? What we are going to do? I mean, as discussed before with the other speakers, the most important issue to establish the trust in the financial system.
Yes.
I mean, when we look at the credit assessment of participation banks, not in Turkey, I mean, it's same in other countries as well, we can see that they're using risk-averse mechanism. And all the products we can see, somehow they are replicating the conventional ones.
Yes.
So that's the one important issue. So what should they do? I mean, they should have some innovation products, supporting by technology as well. And it is not only by those institutions as well. It should be an enabling environment, including supporting regulations as well. I mean, all Muslim countries, they have their system. I mean, of course, there are 2-3 exceptions. They have their system based on conventional financial structures.
Yes.
So this is the one of the issue. Other issue is, I think, I mean, Islam has some kind of products, instruments for social inclusion that we have not utilized them yet, like zakat, waqf, qard al-hasan, and sadaqah. And with the new technologies, I mean, I see some examples that,
Those are not profitable, you know, yeah, this is feasible for the banks.
Not everything, I mean, should be profitable, but of course, I mean, the idea is how to reach the, you know, people, not somehow excluded from the financial system.
Definitely, yes.
So this is also important. And other thing is, I mean, it's not about only digital technology. I mean, we should have a digital technology, but there is a new terminology in the world by Japanese government. It's not only Industry 4.0, it is Society 5.0. With all benefits of Industry 4.0, with all benefits of financial technologies like artificial intelligence, big data, how we are going to use all of these technologies for the help of the society. So with all instruments, I mean, governments, international organizations, and responsible financial institutions should consider those issues as well. And the last thing is, I mean, it is digital or not, financial regulations should be tailored to the needs of some disadvantaged group, like women, like micro-enterprises, SMEs, and some other groups.
Yes, definitely. You're right. You're right.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Farrukh. Mr. Fatih Kazan put the problem on the table, and we know that it's the biggest problem of the Islamic finance, in my opinion, especially the perception. How can we overcome this problem? establishing a central Sharia board is a solution for that, or it's not enough to solve this problem? What do you think about it?
Okay, well, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I was actually in this hotel and probably in the same hall when I did a presentation at one of the events organized by Bursa Istanbul. And my presentation was about setting up central Sharia boards.
Which year you said?
It's about 2 or 3 years ago.
2 or 3. We
And
didn't establish
this
central
was
Sharia board at that
This-
time, but now we have.
Yes, so this was actually before the Turkish Central Sharia Board was established.
Yes.
And my presentation was a precursor to that, because in those days, in my capacity of member of IOFI's Governance and Ethics Board, I was actually developing the standard, IOFI standard on Central Sharia Board.
Yeah.
So I did this presentation here, and that was, when I tried to make it clear, to the Turkish stakeholders, like, many others from the region, that having a central Sharia board definitely helps, and this is something that is required in order to bring more transparency, in order to bring more order, and to provide confidence, to the regulator, to the consumer, that everything is in compliance with Sharia.
Yes.
Now, this is an increasing trend that we are observing across the board. Now, many countries, every, I think, 2-3 months, we get the news that a new country has adopted a central Sharia board, and countries are establishing. Why? Because I think the whole industry is feeling that this is required, and it helps, in evening out some of, the challenges. However, having a central Sharia board is not enough to, create that, or to change that perception that people have. And, I'm sitting here, on the stage, and I have, I actually regret to say that unfortunately, until now, the general perception around the world is that Islamic finance is sort of second-class type of finance, right? So you have to forgive me for my words, but this is the reality that I'm talking. So it's not seen as a premium product. It's not really the preferred option, for people. For very few, only I think a small minority of the society or of the, of the consumer group will actually go. Otherwise, people, they will just sit on the fence, and they are not fully convinced, because, they cannot see the difference between conventional finance and the current form of participation banking or Islamic banking. And this is where we need to change. What Khalid already mentioned, that we have to make it more tuned with the spirit of Sharia. So what we see in the products these days is form and substance, they are compliant with Sharia, but the spirit of the product is not really in line with Sharia. So we have to bring that spirit. That third element is missing. Yes. Plus, I think we need to also create the awareness, and that's where financial technology becomes very handy. There is no other way. It will be a very, very costly exercise to educate people, to approach the masses in the public that you want, and to educate, for example, the specific target customers that you want, for example, the SME owners. Yes. Now, with financial technology, this awareness, this financial literacy can be created in a very efficient way, and you can reach those masses, with simple things like apps and so on. You can achieve what you haven't been able to achieve so far. And this is, I think, where this is where technology will become a game changer, and that's where we need to focus. So on one hand, yes, Central Sharia Board is important, and a supporting and enabling environment, meaning regulation and all the ecosystem that is required is also important. But I think you need to also focus, the industry needs to focus on this education and this awareness using the technology. It's very much possible.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, Central Sharia boards are a small part of this problem, as a solution,
And I would, with your permission, I would just like to add one more point, related to what
yes, okay.
Mr. Fatih said, and you commented, that zakat and waqf, for example, they are not profitable. I think this is again a problem of perception, because they are profitable. They are profitable. They are profitable in two ways. First of all, by virtue of Sharia itself, there is a share in the zakat that is actually, what you call ring-fenced for the one who is actually collecting and distributing zakat, or amilu zakat. So maybe this is something that the banks are missing probably, and they can, look at it. But also in managing waqf, they can actually make a lot of money from, that as well. There is again, they can be the nazir, they can be, there are so many things that they can do. And plus with the advent of blockchain, etc., one of the things that, that is, I think, impeding the benefit of zakat and sadaqah is because the people who are giving, they are not sure where their money is going and how that is changing lives. Now, if you put this on a blockchain, right? You use technology, you put sadaqah, you put zakat, you put waqf on a blockchain, that will create a transparency. It will create a confidence that never existed before, because then the donor or the payer of zakat or sadaqah will be able to track all the way through to the final end, and even in few years down the line he will be able or she will be able to see the benefit of that. So
right.
these are the things
Indirectly.
that needs to be done.
Yes, you're right, definitely. Yes, Mr.
Regarding to WAQF, I would like to share with you that Islamic Development Bank last year established a Center of Excellence for WAQF in Medina, which is mostly an online platform for all stakeholders to share the innovative solutions for WAQF. And it also aims for training and capacity building for member countries as well.
Yes, that's good. That's a good example for us, maybe. Yes, I want to ask you one more question, Mr. Fatih Kazan. That's you work at Islamic Development Bank, and we heard that Islamic Development has a good example with as sukuk issuances for sustainable development of the countries. I mean, green sukuk. Can you tell us a little bit information about these sukuk issuances?
This week we are issuing a green sukuk. First time an international organization, AAA organization, issuing a sukuk. Yes. So we have completed our sustainable framework, and I believe it's going to help the green issuers. When IDB, an institution like IDB, is in the field as well, and all the proceedings will be used for all green projects like climate change. And I can also tell you that IDB is biggest green issuer in the world as a AAA issuer. SRI, such socially responsible investments, can easily fit the Islamic finance because it is all the benefit of the society. This is the main aim by Islam as well. So we are working with our member countries, and we are focusing on our objectives, which are fighting with the poverty, boosting the shared prosperity. And our objectives are synced with the Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations. But interestingly, financing the Sustainable Development Goals, there is a gap, financing gap, $2.5 trillion to finance all SDGs in the world. And for our member countries, it is estimated that $700 billion every year we need to finance SDGs in our member countries. It is easy to understand that it is not IDBs or some other multilateral institutions, organizations' duty. It has to be a partnership with governments and especially with the private sector as well. Otherwise, it is very difficult to finance this gap. So partnership is one of the main pillars in our new development program by our president, which is called President's 5-year program. And the other thing is, we do care a lot on investing science, technology, and innovation. According to our internal studies, we have seen that the biggest challenge for SDGs is the SDG 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure.
Yes.
So having said that, we are putting science, technology, and innovation in the heart of our development strategy. And now we established a STI fund, Science, Technology, and Investment Fund, to help our member countries and Muslim society in other non-member countries as well. There is an engaged platform with that fund, which scientists and entrepreneurs can discuss the different, innovative solutions. And also, there is one transformation fund. It is like a seed capital, $500 million just for micro enterprises and SMEs for their innovative solutions.
Yes, that's very good. And before close the topic, I want to ask you, Mr. Khalid, one more thing, just not specifically for Islamic finance, but we are curious about that, especially fintech has, as a disruptive technology for this financial sector especially. Can you say that what effects of fintech for our financial stability, payment systems, and also consumer investor protections and regulatory challenges? Can you give us, from your experiences, just in other countries maybe, some information about it?
I mean, I think it's interesting. Banks are heavily regulated, heavily supervised, and yet you can have crowdfunding platforms taking money from consumers, investing in projects, losing money. So a lot of fintechs seem to be in this gray space in different jurisdictions.
Yes.
And I know of at least like one sort of crowdfunding, Islamic crowdfunding platform in Asia, where they've taken a lot of money to invest in projects, but that fintech doesn't have the resources necessary to go and supervise those individual projects. And that once the money goes into the project, it doesn't pay back, it loses money, and yet, those consumers aren't protected. Now, I know in some jurisdictions they have the concept of a regulatory sandbox where you go in there and you practice, but even then it's still not clear sometimes who actually has the responsibility. And simplistically, any platform that's taking money should have some form of supervision. Now, you probably need a light touch in terms of, for the big players, they would like to block a lot of these startups by saying you need to have compliance officer, financial officer, etc. If you have all of these things, no fintech will ever launch.
Yeah.
So you do need to have a kind of middle ground where, as a fintech or a crowdfunding platform or anything that takes money from the consumer, some kind of license, some kind of disclosure needs to be applied. You give them a bit of freedom, but ultimately, when they're taking money, they need to be regulated. There's a lot of risk, I think, in that system. Now, at the moment, they're not a systemic risk. If one of these fintechs goes bankrupt, nobody would even notice.
Yeah.
But this is why, like, the conversation around Facebook Libra, if that was to launch, they would have more funds, with 2 billion people on Facebook. If all those people are giving money to Facebook to use their currency, Facebook suddenly becomes one of the largest funds in the world, like a sovereign wealth fund.
Yes.
They are buying sovereign debt, which makes them very powerful, and they're systemically important. If something were to happen to that Facebook fund, if they were to collapse, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that are somehow lost. So it's interesting how, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, he talks a lot, he wants to be regulated and so on, and he's going the right way about it. But, whether Apple will launch a bank, whether Amazon will launch a bank, all these guys, it's great that they can come in because the banks are too comfortable.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, always talking about crypto being black money, KYC, AML, all the rest of it. He was blocking the crypto, and then he launched his own JP Morgan coin. So this is what happens. You don't want the existing players to block the new guys, because these are the guys that are pushing the envelope, but then there's a lot of risk. So you need a regulator that's highly educated, sophisticated, to come in, make sure they're supervised, but not too slow. And that's why I think the combination of a regulated bank with a unregulated sort of fintech makes
Yes.
a good partnership to make sure consumers are protected.
Yes, yes, you're right, yes. Thank you for that. And we have 3 interesting questions. I want to ask one of you maybe. This is related with the blockchains. Mr. Irfan asked these questions maybe in this hall, I don't know. Could we say that using blockchain system will terminate banking system and thus people could easily make investment without interest? What do you think about it? One more time.
So would blockchain allow investment without interest?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I mean, look, the concept of interest is nothing to do with blockchain or even banking. You can have private equity. Financial services go from debt to equity and everything in between. Now, you don't have to be Islamic to do private equity.
Yes.
Blockchain is just a technology. So if you want to do debt on blockchain, you can do debt.
Yes.
If you want to do private equity or crowdfunding on blockchain, you can do crowdfunding. It's just
any relationship between
it's just the technology, and so
Yes.
people should not be too hung up. Now, what fintech does, investing small amounts, $100, $500 is too expensive. You can't do it. But with
Yeah.
blockchain technology, you can create an asset and have a property worth 1 million. You can have it divided between 2,000 people, each of them with a small share. You can't do that in the existing financial system. So blockchain allows this type of fractional, tiny ownership, which means that it helps more investment culture, and in that way helps more non-interest-based finance. So technology enables it, but it's not the answer. If nobody wants to use it, then it won't solve the problem of Islamic finance.
But sometimes we hear from the internet that some of coins, bitcoins like that, receiving fatwas from the Sharia boards or not. This is a question in our mind nowadays. Yeah. We are not sure that the blockchain and the bitcoins are different. We know.
Yeah. Okay, this is a very, very controversial question because is Bitcoin Sharia compliant? I've heard that a million
Yeah,
times.
Sharia compliant bitcoins.
I would say, look, is the US dollar Sharia compliant? Right? The US dollar is not backed by anything.
Yeah.
Before it was the gold standard.
Yes.
You could hand in your dollar at Fort Knox, and in theory, Fort Knox should give you a piece of gold. Then they realized they didn't have enough gold, and they were financing the Vietnam War, so they issued more and more dollars. So I think, and I'm not a Sharia scholar, but even within Islam, you have ijtihad, you have the concept of pragmatism. Now, my sort of feeling, if you're happy with the US dollar, then you should be happy with Bitcoin. People say volatility is an issue. I would say the Turkish lira is pretty volatile. The last thing I would say is that in favor of fiat currencies, if you can pay your taxes in a currency, that gives it some legitimate value because I, as an individual, I have to pay taxes, and if I can pay them in dollars but I can't pay them in Bitcoin, that's maybe a decision factor. Now, interesting, in Switzerland, in the state of Zug, you can now pay 10% of your taxes in crypto. So as soon as a government lets me pay my tax in crypto, for me, that's just as good as the dollar or the Swiss franc. So I think a lot of the conversations around Sharia compliance, people have come up very quickly, it's intangible this, intangible that, but the issue with Islamic finance, if you're too emotionally invested from the religious side, it clouds your thinking sometimes on the financial side. Islamic finance will succeed not because it's Islamic, but because it creates wealth, investment, shared prosperity, and it makes financial sense. Not because I call it Islamic and then suddenly everybody is. So crypto for me depends on the purpose. If it's asset-backed, 100% compliant. If it's non-asset backed, I put it in the category of somewhere near the fiat currency of unbacked currencies.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good definition. Yeah, thank you. Farrukh, do you have any answer for that question or not?
No, I just wanted to add, and
Add
Khalid has
something,
already
you
said
can add,
that.
yes, we have
because I think people are getting confused with blockchain as blockchain itself is a technology, right? So is smartphone, is it, you know, Sharia compliant or not Sharia compliant? It depends on what
Yes,
you do
like
with,
that.
with smartphone. Blockchain is exactly the same, so it doesn't really matter, you know, so that has never been a question. So what you do with blockchain, that is something, you know, that needs to be looked at, and that needs to be verified that it's Sharia compliant or not. And I think this is where, you know, a bigger challenge is coming, that a lot of things will start happening. They have already started happening on blockchain. And I think, you know, the Sharia scholars and the Sharia boards, they are a bit behind. You know, they are actually struggling in understanding, you know, what's going on, and to, you know, they're actually struggling to pronounce, you know, their Sharia opinion on those things.
Yeah,
So this
yeah,
is
yeah.
also a challenge of fintech
Yes,
coming
thank you.
here.
Thank you. Jan, there is a very short questions, but it is very important for me, I think. Can you answer this very short this question? Are there any real-life blockchain-based application in Islamic finance or conventional that are widely used and successful? An application.
Sure.
As a Muslim, we can invest
yeah.
in a blockchain.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I know I've seen a chart in somebody else's slide. There's probably around 120 Islamic fintech companies worldwide. That's a lot. Now, is anybody actually operational and functioning? You have some Islamic robo-advisories that are functioning, which are using algorithms to help people invest their portfolio or their wealth Islamically. But in terms of Islamic investing, there are Islamic crowdfunding. Now again, crowdfunding automatically is more Islamic. Now, as long as you're crowdfunding a halal project as opposed to a beer factory or an arms weapon factory, it's Islamic. So I would say there is already active, especially within the crowdfunding space, there are some Islamic crowdfunding platforms that are already operational.
Yes.
In terms of what we're trying to do in terms of social impact and sukuk, this is still a bit new, but inshallah, I'm pretty sure within the next
Inshallah.
24 months we'll get there.
Okay. There is also one more question, but I think this is out of scope because we are not Sharia scholars among us. There isn't any. From Mustafa Kamiloğlu, sorry for that, we can't answer this question. And if you have any questions from the conventional method, you can answer from that one. From you, we can get a question from you. Yes, please.
Maalesef çaresizlik sendromu yaşıyoruz. Sorum şu, artık aklımızı başımıza alıp Müslümanlar olarak bu kurulu dünya düzenini tersine dönüştürecek İslami bir yapıyı, yani Kur'an'ı akli olarak yorumlayıp bu insanlık dışı insan hayatını sonlandırmamız gerekmiyor mu? Teşekkür ediyorum.
Sounds like a very
Yes,
emotional
that's
question.
very emotional. That was what I was afraid of them, because we are very sensitive about the religious issues in Turkey, and that is an example from that kind of question.
Maybe I can answer, you know.
Yes, we
within
can answer.
one
If
minute,
you want,
you
you
know.
can.
The question was, I mean, shortly, when we are going to live the real Islam, which is, you know, told us in Quran. So when we compare Islamic finance with the conventional side, we can see that it is, I mean, it's a new industry. I mean, conventional banking, conventional finance is coming from centuries years ago. But now Islamic finance is like, you know, 40 years or 50 years.
Yes.
I mean, still comparing with the conventional side, we can see that Islamic finance is, you know, is growing, you know,
Yes.
is growing very well, actually.
Yes.
So I believe there is time to adapt the real, you know, now, I mean, we talk about that replicating the conventional side, but at the same time, with the new technologies, there is way to adopt the real principle of Islam. So I think it is a progress, and I believe that we are doing well, to catch, the real Islamic financial
You're
principles.
right, you're
It's a
right.
journey.
It's a journey. Did you understand this question or
Of
if you?
course.
It's okay. Yani çok kısa bir Türkçe ifade etmek gerekirse biz yani İslam'ı yalnızca işte Peygamberimiz zamanındaki geçerli bir din olarak görmüyoruz. Her zamana, her döneme mutlaka söyleyeceği şeyler vardır ve bugün biz Müslüman olarak Allah'ın bize sunduğu mutlaka seçenekler vardır ve biz bunların arayışı içerisindeyiz. İslami Finans da bu arayışın bir sonucu. Bunun yorumlanması tabii kişilere göre farklılık arz ediyor. Yani artık bu tercih meselesi haline geldi. Belki siz tercih etmeyeceksiniz, sizin din anlayışınız farklı olabilir. Ama bu yanlış olduğu anlamına gelmiyor. Bugünkü İslami finans uygulamalarının veya teorisinin yanlış olduğu anlamına gelmiyor bence. Yani söyleyebileceğim bu kadar. Bu konuda zaten uzman değilim. Yes, please. Yes. And then?
Bizde bitti Ömer Bey.
Thank you very much. Your speech. I want to ask you a question about, many Islamic countries. If possible, in the near future, Sukuk is the best things for it's the first stage of this maybe. Is the Islamic currency. It will be in near future from this stage. It's from Turkey. If the leader of this stage, Turkey, and the other countries from Islamic countries, could be create an Islamic currency together. Is it possible in near future?
Yes.
What do you think about this?
He thinks that the Islamic currency is possible among the Islamic countries or not?
My short answer is no. I mean, look, the Islamic countries can't agree on anything now. You think they're going to give up? Look at the EU. Look at the euro. It's a disaster between North and South Europe. So you cannot put countries together which have very different economic profiles.
Definitely.
And have one currency. The EU, the euro is proof of that. Now what you can have, and which would be my sort of blue ocean sort of vision, if you have banks in Turkey, banks in Saudi, banks in Malaysia, all using a blockchain system, they can be trading their assets with each other. So I don't see a single currency, and I don't think you should actually, it's not a goal you should have as a country to share your currency with others. But even digital, you want to, as a country, you need to maintain sovereignty over your own currency, because your situation is very different to Saudi Arabia or Malaysia. You will hurt yourself. But if you create a network of Islamic countries under the people like the IDB, they can unify these countries under a common standard with a common market. Then you have 1 trillion plus people participating. That is a powerful idea.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We can get a very short question from you, and that is the last question. Sorry for that. Just one question.
Okay.
That is impossible. Sorry for that. That is impossible.
I'm terribly sorry, but the other speaker, the main speaker, is waiting. They have informed me like that. But thank you very much. It was really enlightening for us to be able to discuss about this subject. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and our distinguished panelists. As a token of our thank and appreciation, we have to present you a certificate, because saplings has been layered in Izmir. Small trees has been layered for you, and those certificates are for you. Çok teşekkür ediyorum. Efendim, bu konuklarımızla ilgili olarak da aynı uygulamaya gittik. Onların adına İzmir'de fidanlar dikildi. O fidanların sertifikalarını kendilerine takdim etmek üzere Türkiye Katılım Bankaları Birliği Genel Sekreteri Sayın Osman Akgüz'ü ben davet etmek isterim. Buyurun efendim. Estağfurullah. Hakikaten harika bir toplantı oldu. Ağzınıza sağlık. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz Sayın Başkan, değerli katılımcılar. Thank you. Çok teşekkür ederim.